Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 17th of July and we're going to deal with two very important topics which are in news. First is the money bill. Actually, this is in news because some people from the opposition currently have filed a petition in the Supreme Court to rehear the cases. Actually, the ruling government in 2016, 17, 18 passed certain laws as money bills. For example, the Aadhaar Act was passed as money bill. The Finance Bill of 2017 passed as money bill. And most importantly, amendment to the Prevention of Money Laundering Act was passed as a money bill. Money bill, basically, Lok Sabha has all the powers, Rajya Sabha has no powers. President has to give his or her assent to the bill. The Supreme Court has testified that the amendments to PMLA are legal, but the way these amendments were done, they have referred this to a 7-judge bench. So let us see how things turn out to be. The next is the Yuan challenge in Rupee Rouble trade. The Indian Prime Minister visited Russia recently and they both decided to increase the trade to $100 billion by 2030. They also pledged to continue the trade in rupee ruble. But unfortunately, India has a trade deficit of $57 billion with Russia. And in such a high trade deficit, you know, continuing trade is something which is not feasible. Continuing trade in rupee ruble trade. And now Russian firms are saying that settle the payments in Chinese yuan because their trade with China has been in yuan and ruble. So this is posing a challenge for India. So after this, we'll be discussing the MCQs. Then we'll be discussing the MCQs of yesterday. Now, the money bill. CGI DY Chandrachud has said that, there are various petitions which are there in front of me and I have to hear those petitions. Those petitions are with respect to certain laws passed as money bills. The petitioners are claiming that they should not have been passed as money bills. Those are ordinary laws. You want to see the list of those laws which have been passed as money bills? Most importantly, amendment to the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Second is Finance Act of 2017. Third is Aadhaar Act of 2016. These three laws have been passed as money bills. And the petitioners are saying they should not have passed as money bills. Money bills practically gives zero power to Rajya Sabha and all the powers are there with Lok Sabha. And hence, the Supreme Court has said, the CJI basically has said that I will list when I form constitution benches. The Chief Justice added. The constitutional benches are those benches which are having more than 5 judges deciding on a substantial matter of the constitution. So he said that, he will be forming a constitutional bench for hearing these cases. Now, money bill is mentioned in the constitution and it is mentioned in Article 110 of the constitution. So what is a money bill? It is deemed to contain only provisions dealing with all or any of the matters under clauses A to G of Article 110(1), largely including the appropriation of money from Consolidated Fund of India and taxation. So, Consolidated Fund of India say if you have to, put in money or withdraw money, money bill has to be there. But all the cases where putting in money or withdrawing money from Consolidated Fund of India, money bills are not there. So, largely they are there. In other words, money bill is restricted only to these specified financial matters. So Article 110 is that article according to which, a money bill is defined. A bill shall be deemed to a money bill if it contains only provisions dealing with all or any of the following matters. So this is there, all or any. The imposition, abolition, remission, alteration or regulation of any tax, first of all. The regulation of the borrowing of money or the giving of any guarantee by the government of India or the amendment of the law with respect to any financial obligation undertaken or to be undertaken by the government of India. The custody of consolidated fund or the contingency fund of India. The appropriation of monies out of the consolidated fund of India. The declaring of any expenditure to be expenditure charged on the consolidated fund of India or the increasing of amount of any such expenditure. Then the receipt of money on account of Consolidated Fund of India or the public account of India, or the custody or issue of such money, or the audit of the accounts of union or the state. And last, any matter incidental to any of the matters specified in the sub clauses A to F. So 110 A to G, any one or a combination of these are being followed or fulfilled, that law will be labeled as a money bill. As simple as that. Other provisions with respect to a money bill. The bill shall not be deemed to be a money bill. As I told you that, see, all the expenditures and all the revenue of the government, you label that bill as a money bill? No. It shall not be deemed to be a money bill by reason only that provides for the imposition of fines or other pecuniary penalties. If any law is imposing some penalties on people, it does not mean that you pass that law as a money bill. You can pass that law as an ordinary bill also. Or for the demand of payment of fees or licenses or fees for services rendered, or by reason that it provides for the imposition, abolition, remission, alteration or regulation of any tax by any local authority or body for local purposes. If any question arises whether a bill is a money bill or not, the decision of the Speaker of the House of the People thereon shall be final. There shall be endorsement on every money bill. The certificate of the Speaker should be there, and with that certificate, that money bill will go to Rajya Sabha and to the President also. So a certification has to be there. And if any question arises, Speaker's decision is final whether that bill is a money bill or not. It is introduced in Lok Sabha only with the prior consent of the President. Once passed, the President has to sign it. It can be introduced by a minister only in, and no provision of joint sitting of both the houses is there for a money bill. Both houses cannot be constituted, cannot sit for the money bill for passing that. So this clearly means Lok Sabha having more powers with respect to a money bill. Powers of Rajya Sabha on money bill. What are the powers of Rajya Sabha? Let us understand that as well. Rajya Sabha has no power to reject or amend a money bill, but it can make recommendations and return it to the Lok Sabha within 14 days. Now let's suppose Rajya Sabha doesn't return the bill within 14 days to Lok Sabha. If Rajya Sabha doesn't return the bill within 14 days, neither passes it, money bill is considered pass in both the houses. So it can maximum withhold, Rajya Sabha can maximum withhold this money bill with itself for 14 days. In case Rajya Sabha gives some recommendations, the Lok Sabha can then accept or reject the recommendations. It depends on Lok Sabha to accept it or to reject the recommendation. It is not binding then also. So that needs to be understood and that needs to be learned, that very limited or practically no powers with Rajya Sabha. Now the current case, there is this legal question concerning the amendments to the Prevention of Money Laundering Act made from 2015 onwards in the Prevention of Money Laundering Act through money bills, giving enforcement directorate almost blanket powers of arrest, raids, etc., etc. So there was an amendment in 2019 in PMLA, and that made this money laundering act as cognizable offense, means arrests can be done without a warrant, and the offense was made non-bailable. So extraordinary powers were given to the ED, and that amendment to the PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which was already existing since 2005, was done through a money bill route. That was concerning. Though the court had upheld the legality of PMLA amendments, it left the question of whether the amendments could have been passed as money bills to the 7-judge bench. The court said that amendments are legal, means money laundering is a cognizable offense, no arrest warrant is needed. So the extraordinary powers given to ED is fine. They are constitutionally valid, they are legal. But the way they have been, that amendment has been done, that way has to be decided by this 7-judge bench, which the CJI has said he will be forming it. 7-judge bench will be a constitutional bench. Any judge, any bench which is having more than 5 or 5 judges is a constitutional bench. Next is the Yuan challenge in rupee ruble trade. As we know that India's trade with Russia has increased a lot, $65 billion. Now, in this $65 billion trade, $61 billion is exports by Russia to India, and exports by India to Russia roughly $4 billion. The trade deficit is $57 billion. Now, in this skewed trade, which is, highly in favor of Russia, payments will not be settled in domestic currencies. Let's suppose we settle the payments in rupee for imports coming from Russia. Russia will accommodate or accumulate a lot of INR. What will it do of INR? INR is not a hard currency. INR is not in demand everywhere. And the Russians are now forcing Indians ki bhai, do one thing. You don't want to pay us in dollars. We don't want to accept in dollars also. We want to bypass that dollar system. Both of us want to bypass that. You pay us in Chinese yuan. Because we have to settle the payments of the Chinese, our trade with China is increasing and our trade with China is balanced. Our trade with China is in ruble yuan. There also we are bypassing dollar. So you settle the payments in yuan. In this scenario, Indians, they feel ki bhai, we are strengthening yuan. If we are settling the payments in yuan, we are generating increased demand for yuan by doing this. We don't want to do this. This will, on one hand, not let internationalization of rupee happen, and on the other hand, it will strengthen Chinese currency, which is our arch rival. So this is basically the yuan challenge in the rupee ruble trade between India and Russia. So in a strategic move to curb its burgeoning oil imports and reduce dependence on the expensive US dollar, India aims to bolster bilateral trade with Russia to $100 billion by 2030. This is what has been pledged. But the dynamics of Russia-India trade have been skewed. Skewed means highly in favor of Russia. In Hindi, we can say it ek tarfa. Russia has rapidly ascended to become India's top oil supplier, but Indian exports to Russia have struggled. Bilateral trade worth $66 billion in FY24, but $57 billion is the trade deficit, which we need to understand. And in this high amount of trade deficit, you know, trade in domestic currencies is unsustainable. Now, has increased trade with Russia benefited India? Yes, Russia was giving us oil, discounted oil, and we were taking that oil, refining that oil in India, and we were exporting it to the world. So, in overall, benefit, we've had $10 billion of benefit we've taken from this particular episode since 2022, because we have started increased imports from Russia, particularly oil imports, after the Russia-Ukraine war started in 2022. So while India has managed to save over $10 billion by importing cheaper Russian oil in the last 2 years and has benefited from exporting petroleum products, processing the Urals crude, but meager Indian exports to Russia mean that a historic geopolitical opportunity, reduced dependence on the expensive US dollar, has remained elusive. Continued unbalanced trade with Russia could force India to use the Chinese yuan, which runs counter to its efforts towards internationalization of the rupee. Why widening trade deficit is benefiting yuan? The widening trade deficit with India. Russia is apprehensive of receiving payments in INR. It is accumulating INR. What will it do of so much INR? On the other hand, it is saying ki bhai, settle the payments in Chinese yuan. To the Indians, Russians are saying, we have trade with China, we have increased trade with China, and our trade with China is balanced. There we can settle the payments to the Chinese in yuan. So unlike India, China has seized the export opportunities emerging in Russia amid crippling Western sanctions and a host of Western companies and banks exiting the war economy. So multiple European banks and all, they have exited the Russian economy, and the place has been taken by the Chinese companies over there. Chinese exports to Russia have actually grown faster than imports of Russian oil to India or in India. Chinese custom data shows that shipments to Russia jumped by 47% year on year to $111 billion in 2023, while imports grew by 13% to $129 billion. So two-way trade is $240 billion. $111 billion basically is Chinese exports to Russia, and $129 billion is Chinese imports from Russia. So China is importing more from Russia, but yes, largely if you see, there's very less balance or very less difference, and hence you will see this trade as balanced trade largely. Now, since trade between the two countries is more balanced compared to India-Russia trade, it has fostered the use of domestic currency. The Russian government has stated that 95% of trade between China and Russia occurs in domestic currency. As a result, yuan is the most sought after currency in Russia, even more than this dollar. Russian oil exports are therefore requesting payments from Indian refineries in Chinese currency, while the use of the rupee has remained restricted. So that is why this widening trade deficit between India and Russia is a big challenge. Why are exports to Russia challenging for India? Why can't Indians increase exports to Russia, or what are the challenges Indian exporters are facing? Why are exports to Russia are not increasing? So the biggest challenge has been the reluctance of private banks to facilitate trade with Russia due to fears of Western sanctions. So there are certain private banks which are operating in India and they are operating in the Western countries as well. So they feel that if they are, facilitating trade with Russia, India's trade with Russia, so they'll face sanctions or they'll face some problems in their branches which are located in the Western countries. Most private banks have significant business interest in Western countries and hence they are doing this. Indian exporters are also facing difficulties using rupee settlement mechanism with while trading with Russia. Why? Because exporters initially complained that although RBI had launched the mechanism, that is rupee ruble trade mechanism, but a standard operating procedure has not been set. So SOP is missing. Moreover, the ruble and rupee, unlike the yuan, have experienced considerable volatility. So that is also a problem. How are Russia India planning to boost trade? Now, during Modi's visit, both talked about increasing the trade, and there is this Eurasian Economic Union, which is basically a grouping of 5 countries. It basically consists of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia, representing $5 trillion economy. According to the joint statement, India and Russia agreed to cooperate in manufacturing sectors such as transport, engineering, metallurgy, and chemicals. So, one, we are seeking a free trade agreement. This is on the cards with EU. Once the free trade agreements get signed, then trade is expected to boost. It is quite natural. Then collaborating on manufacturing. Manufacturing in India for Russia, so exports will increase. Russia and India have also planned the implementation of joint projects in priority areas and emphasize the importance of expanding reciprocal trade. And last is the Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement, the same kind of agreement which was signed between India and Austria. So, this all are in the pipeline. Let's see how impactful they are. But yes, Indian exports to Russia needs to increase. Now we come to the MCQs. Which of the following bills has been passed as money bills? Finance Act 2018, Aadhaar Act 2016, amendments to the PMLA, that is Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Only 1 and 2, only 2 and 3, only 3, all of the above. So, carefully answer this question. Consider the following statements and mark the correct one. Money bill has to be certified by the Speaker of Lok Sabha. If there is a question about a bill, whether it is a money bill or not, the decision of the President is final. Only 1, only 2, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. Carefully read these questions and answer. Consider the following statements and mark how many of them are correct. The money bill cannot be amended by Rajya Sabha. A money bill can be introduced by any MP in the Lok Sabha only. The President has to give his or her assent to the bill. Only one statement is correct, only 2 statements are correct, all the statements are correct, or none of the statements are correct. Fourth, which factor is making India-Russia trade unsustainable? Pressure of Western countries on India, increasing trade deficit for India, the blockade done by Russia in Black Sea, none of the above. So, this bit conceptual, but yes, answerable. Next is, which of the following countries are part of Eurasian Economic Union? List of 4 countries, you have to find the correct combination. Which of them are part of EEU? So, factual, direct kind of question it is. Now, the MCQs of 16th July we'll be discussing. Falcon 9 rocket is owned by which of the following? Starlink, SpaceX, Boeing, or NASA? Actually, it is 15th of July, Saturday. Starlink, SpaceX, Boeing, or NASA? The correct answer is SpaceX. See, Falcon 9 is owned by SpaceX, carrying Starlink satellites, which were launched in the wrong orbit due to a failure in one of the stages. Second, consider the following and mark the correct one. Falcon 9 is a completely reusable rocket It is not a completely reusable rocket. It is a partially reusable rocket because one of the stages is completely burnt and one of the stages is reusable. Falcon 9 can carry humans to space. This statement is correct. This statement is wrong. So B is the correct answer of this particular statement or question, sorry. Which states in India have separate law for tackling Naxalism? So basically Maharashtra has tabled a bill. It does not have a law because it is not yet passed and it is less likely to be passed. Chhattisgarh and Telangana, they do have, and hence C is the correct answer for it, only 2 and 3. What happens to a tabled bill if the assembly term ends and elections are conducted? It gets lapsed and has to be retabled in the new assembly. Yes, this is the correct answer option. Let's discuss others as well. It does not lapse and can be picked up for discussions in the next assembly. No, it is a rule that it lapses in the assembly, any pending bills. It automatically gets passed, not a chance. None of the above, not a chance. So this is the correct answer, A. That is it. So we had 4 questions only the other day. Now with this, we come to an end of today's session. I will be seeing you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, keep watching the videos, keep attempting the questions. I'm seeing more number of people are attempting the questions. That is good. And many of you have answered that question of workers population ratio, and all the definitions till now which have been posted are correct. It is basically the number of people working upon the total population into 100. It is in percentage terms. That is the correct definition of worker population. So this is it from my end. Namaste. Jai Hind. Take care.